Hey, Cameron here with Butters Tech, and today we are looking at mini PCs. And this will be a bit of a rant because I have basically driven myself absolutely crazy messing around with these things. The whole point of this was I am absolutely sick of my Chromecasts on my TVs. They drive me nuts. They crash all the time. They have HDMI issues. You sort it out, and then you decide, oh, I'll just buy the latest and greatest Chromecast because my other one's having issues. It probably just needs a speed bump. Well, it's been 5 or 6 years of this, and no purchase of additional hardware to Google is going to fix these issues in my estimation, and I'm sick of it. I am absolutely sick of unreliable products from Google, frankly. And my Nest doorbell, my Nest thermostats, the Chromecasts, they're all going because I am so sick of the unreliability. I will get off on a complete rant. Anyways, I want to replace my Chromecasts with HTPCs like I used to run all the time. And you know what? We're in somewhat of a golden age of mini PCs, which are perfect for that purpose. And you know, something this size, used for an HTPC, you used to have to build a whole computer, a special case. You're spending thousands and spending a ton of time building this out. You can pick one of these guys up for insanely cheap for what it is. And so I decided I would go back to that. Anyways, I already had the GMKTec K8 Plus because I was using it with some eGPU experiments because this one has an Oculink port. But I decided, yes, I'm going to move to mini PCs to replace my Chromecast to run all my media. I had a few different requirements. My requirements were, obviously, play 4K video. Pretty easy. Any of these in the lineup are going to do that just fine. B, I've been playing a lot of Trackmania with friends and family, and I wanted it to be able to have a decent experience playing Trackmania as we pass around the controller. And a lot of these mini PCs are more than capable of doing that. C, I play a lot of, Atlas games, Persona games, Metaphor Refantasio. I want to be able to chill on the couch and play those games and have them be able to do that. And they're not super, super high graphic games. They can be done on iGPUs, which is what I would be using these for. And I also wanted to be able to emulate and play some emulated games that will remain unmentioned. Anyways, here's my lineup of contenders to actually put on my TVs. So, and you'll notice you have 2 TVs. Why are there 4 here? Well, it's going to be a long story, so buckle up. If you like rambling stories from me, you're going to love this video. If you don't like rambling stories from me and you like more benchmarks and things like that, this is not the video for you if you want the benchmarks, because this is going to be long form story, and I'm going to compare all of these mini PCs and tell you what my headspace was as I went between all of them in the ultimate decision to choose one of these to be putting on my TVs. So let's run down the lineup really quick. We have the GMKTec K8 Plus with an 8945HS CPU and a 780M GPU. We have the Minisforum X1 with a Ryzen 7 255. It's actually it's very similar to an 8945HS or an 8745HS. It also has a 780M GPU. It's just rebranded, but it's roughly, the performance between these two is very similar in terms of, the CPU, GPU solution in both of those. We have the AceMagic F3A. Yes, the AceMagic, they got in trouble for having a bunch of spyware on their stuff. Look around for that. But I bought all of these as barebone machines, so it's my own SSD, it's my own software. So, if you get the bare bones and put your own SSD in it, you're going to be fine with them. And we'll talk more about all of these as we go through. But this has a Ryzen 9 HX 370. And the dark horse of this lineup, weird shape, Topton F12. And this one here is the only Intel device in the lineup, and it has an Intel Core Series 2 265H in here with a 140T iGPU solution. Let's talk about where these are all the same. All of these have upgradable RAM, and I use the same RAM in all of them actually. This is CL40 5600 mega transfers RAM. I got these Ripjaws kits. They seem to be the lowest timing, highest bandwidth memory modules. 2 of these have Oculink ports. Like I said, I was using the GMKTec for some eGPU tests and things like that. So this has an Oculink port. And the Minisforum also has an Oculink port on the back, which makes it really nice. These 2 don't have Oculink ports. They do support Oculink ports because they both have 2 NVMe slots. So you can use one for storage and one for some sort of NVMe to Oculink adapter if you want to do that. They all have pretty much the same capabilities, just in different flavors. And all of these, as we get to the end of this story, might be for you. And I'll kind of talk about who these might be good for as we go through them. They're all at dramatically different price points as well, not dramatic, but this one here, I shop around when I go for these, and there'll be some links in the description if you want to, pick some of these up. But I got this for $335, this one right here. The Minisforum I got for $350. The AceMagic F3A I found for $569, and that may sound like a lot to step up from a 780M GPU to an 890M GPU. But if you look at Minisforum, when you step up from this class, you're usually to get an HX 370 and anywhere, you're looking at anywhere from $1,000 to $950 to step into the HX 370 territory, which is crazy because that's double the price of some of these. But the AceMagic at $569 was that little bit of a step up into an 890M. And we'll talk about that in a second. This has the 140T iGPU, and that is definitely way better than the 780M. And I would say it's actually in pure rasterization better than the 890M. So one of the things that stood out to me most was how much the feature sets perform differently across all of this class of device. So for example, something like the 780M versus the 890M, if you look at benchmarks, you're only looking at 10 to 20% faster on an 890M versus a 780M. But in my actual experience with the 2 devices, this 890M over here works so much better in terms of feature sets. When you enable FSR, when you enable frame generation, if you want to do that, it was so much quicker to pop into those modes and run smoothly than the 780M. So even though, for example, if we look at Trackmania, for Trackmania at 1080p on this device, I was only getting, depending on the track, about 40 to 55 frames per second on the 780M. So, I tried turning on frame generation and turning on FSR to bump the resolution up a little bit because I kept turning the resolution down to like 1600 by 900 and then upscaling to 4K. And the 780M didn't want to do that. It did, but it would work, but it would take a second. It would lag a little bit, and then when it actually got there, I almost felt like it was close to, I should just turn this off and just lower my resolution and not even bother with this, because it seemed to struggle. It wasn't quick, it wasn't seamless. On the 890M, even though pure rasterization performance, when you compared the two of them, it snapped right into those FSR modes. It snapped right into the frame generation modes. It didn't have a problem with that nearly as much as the 780M. So even though it only looks like it's 15% quicker in a benchmark, the quality of life on that was so much better. Metaphor Refantasio, same thing. This could do okay. In some areas of the game, you might even get, you're ranging on the 780M in that game from 40 frames a second to maybe 80. But if you tried to turn on frame generation to, make things look a little smoother, you'd get stuttering. It wouldn't feel good over here. On this one, not only is it 15-20% faster, so you're already, 50 plus on your frame rate, but then you can turn on frame generation, and now it's going anywhere from, 70 to 120 frames per second on the 890M. Suddenly you're having a fantastic experience on the 890M. And that was something that really surprised me as someone who looks at these things from, a benchmarking perspective. Oh, how fast is this one? How fast is this one? What's the score in this? What's the score in this? When it actually came down to me using the devices, I found that it's not always about the raw performance of things. It's how well the feature sets work. And granted, if you're someone who just does pure rasterization and things, it's not as big a deal. So I don't know, but it did surprise me. And I did feel like jumping up to the 890M on this machine definitely was worth the extra $200 to get into this class of device. Now, if you're someone who's using an eGPU, all that's null and void, and I'll try to touch on what PCs are good for what. So then I got curious. I got super curious about this machine right here, because in all my research, and also I have a Surface Pro 11th gen Intel, which has a 140V iGPU that is actually quite powerful. So this one has a 140T, which is not the same thing as the 140V, but fairly close. The difference being the 140V has low power DDR5 in basically 8,500 megatransfers per second, where this is using 5,600 megatransfers per second RAM. So the RAM's a lot slower. But what I found with this device, and it's an AliExpress special, and it was very cheap. It's not the cheapest device on here. This one was the cheapest one. This only cost me $378, but inside is a 265H, which is crazy because a 265H is actually very powerful. So I think the reason they're doing that is because this, A, it's a weird format. B, they only have one USB 4 port, one USB-C port, and that's the USB 4 port. So once you use one of those, you're done. The rest of these have a lot more ports that you can use. It does have dual 2.5 gigabyte WAN. I think most of these do, though. And it's chunky, it's weird, it's a weird device. And the worst thing of all is it absolutely cooks your components. There's no fan here. There's a fan on the back side that kind of sucks air in through the pockets. But no, I monitored the temperatures on this device. The RAM is absolutely cooking in here, which I have a solution for. We'll talk about that in a second. But I was curious about this one. And what I found with this one was that it, like I say, it was overheating. As I was playing different games, I would see it was stuttering really strangely. So I ran a TimeSpy benchmark on repeat to kind of determine like a burn-in test to see what it looked like. And it basically saw that, yeah, this is dropping in performance because it's massively overheating. So of course I took it apart and decided to put PTM 7950 in here and also put some thermal putty on the VRMs. And that I'll do a whole video on how to upgrade this machine. So that solved some of the heating issues, but it did not solve the RAM issues of the RAM massively being cooked on the side here. So here we go. 3D printing to the rescue. We've got this guy. So I have created a 3D printed bracket to put on the side of this device with a 120 mil fan. Not pretty by most people's estimations, but I'll be damned if your RAM isn't way cooler than it is with that lid on. And if you take a look at the TimeSpy test now, after doing those mods, especially the PTM 7950 and fixing the thermal putty on the VRMs, we now had frame rate stability that was great. We passed the test and all my weird stuttering issues went away. Coolest RAM on all of these mini PCs. So, once you correct all the problems with this device by upgrading the cooling, this is actually the fastest out of all these machines in terms of graphics. So yeah, not only is it seem to be 10 to 15% better performance than the 890M, here's the problem. Intel's graphic drivers don't have all the features that the 890M does. So if you want to do frame generation, if you want to do FSR type activities, if the game doesn't natively support those things, you're cooked. Well, or you can use lossless scaling, which is a great application, but it was not nearly as seamless as using the built-in driver stack that Radeon has, that AMD has. So yeah, what did I find out through all of this? Well, I found that the 780M is just not quite powerful enough to get the things done that I want to get done on a TV. So the Minisforum and the GMKTec are probably not going to be going on my TVs. And these ones are the ones that I actually will. I still need to decide between these two. Depending on how well I get things to run, I may get a second one of these. The 890M, if you can find it on sale, I think that is definitely, if you don't want to mess around, this is your device. 890M, great chip. It can do most things, and anything it can't do, FSR and frame generation can kind of step in and help you out to get where you want to be. If you have an eGPU, you want one of these guys. These are your guys. If you're going to hook up an eGPU to it anyways, that's fine. For me, in my use case, I just want a simple machine hooked up to the TV, so I can't stack eGPUs on top of things there. I just want a simple set-top device, and that's the route I'm going in this. But I would say if you are a person with eGPU, go with Oculink, use one of these devices, and you're good to go. For media, I won't say this is going to look great in your media cabinet, but it doesn't. It's not noisy. It's not noisy at all with this adapter. In fact, it's so not noisy that not only is the fan not loud? But the fan doesn't even change RPM. I mean, it might, but there's no way to control the RPM in this device. It's so janky, but it's the most performant one out of all of them, and it's probably the quietest one out of all of them as well with this 120 millimeter fan. So for me, I'm going to be using, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to be using this one just because the performance is absolutely there. And where it's not, I can use lossless scaling and tweak it and, you know, get the game where I want it to be. Now, if I just wanted to click and have something work, 890M is where it's at. If you can find a deal on it, because like I say, I don't think it's worth $900, but yet I wouldn't want to have a 780M versus the 890M. So that's why I think this guy, the 255H, the performance was so good that if I go back to my Trackmania example, in that particular game, you could run that at 1080p using this, not even needing any FSR or upscaling, and 1080p looks pretty good. You know, you can upscale it, you know, if you want to. But even that said, 1080p, no upscaling on the 890M, a little bit rough. On this one, pretty seamless. And if you take into account emulation, once we start talking emulation, for whatever it is, the games I emulate, Switch, run very well on Intel Silicon. I don't know why that is, but the performance is just much better than it is on AMD's chipset. So emulation, I give the win to the Intel chip as well. So I don't know. I feel like this Topton F12 is a really good pick if you don't mind going on AliExpress, buying a cheap hunk of plastic that probably might not even work when you get it, and 3D printing an adapter to keep your memory cool, and tearing it apart like I did in the video that I'm going to be posting in order to improve the cooling so it doesn't have weird stutters. But if you do all that, if you do all those things, this is the best mini PC that doesn't have a dedicated GPU. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, guys. It shouldn't be what it is. But this is what it is. I'm going to be using this one on my TV. And I am unapologetic about it. I don't care what any of you think. I don't care if it's ugly as sin. This is the one that works the best for me. Okay? And if you want to do the same thing, you can grab one of these because I don't think anyone's buying them. There's plenty on AliExpress. Anyways, take a look. Let's just briefly go down the lineup and explore each of these. The GMKTec K8 Plus. Nice little box. It's got this removable shroud that comes off that makes it easy to get to the components. The screws are large and easy to deal with. It has dual NICs, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. It has a DisplayPort, HDMI, 2 USB-A's, a USB 4 on the back and the front, 2 extra USB-A's, headphone jack, Oculink port. Good device. Its power brick is larger than other ones. For example, when we look at the Minisforum, even though it's also a 120 watt adapter, same specs, it's much smaller with the Minisforum. I don't know why that is, but I don't know if this is a GAN adapter or something like that. But both the AceMagic and the Minisforum had smaller adapters, where these guys and the GMKTec have these large adapters. But all in all, no issues with the GMKTec. In fact, I recommend it because it's a cheap add-on to an eGPU to get you going and have a full, complete system. Because I don't feel like, while the HX370 is a little bit quicker, than the 8945HS. When you give them both the right amount of watts, they're closer than you would think from a CPU perspective. And GPU matters more for gaming. So this is a great one if you just want an eGPU setup. Minisforum, very similar, the difference being a little bit smaller while not compromising on cooling. In fact, I did not feel like I needed to upgrade the cooling at all on this one because the performance was totally fine, nothing out of spec, and the noise levels were not that loud. Although I would say this one is actually the loudest out of all of them when they're ramped up, but only slightly. It's just because I've tuned this one to make it quieter. This one's very quiet, and this one is very quiet as well. The other neat thing about the Minisforum, again, it has the Oculink, a DisplayPort, HDMI, USB 4, only one LAN port on this one, USB-A. The front has another USB 4 port, two USB-As on the front. It looks nice. It's like a small Mac Mini style type thing. This would mount very easily on the back of a monitor or something like that as well. But it also has built-in speakers that sound fairly decent, which none of the others have any built-in speakers. So this actually will play desktop sounds. You don't need a speaker setup if you have this for, unless you want it to actually sound. It sounds okay, but it's not like having a dedicated sound system, right? So yeah, Minisforum, really good step up. I would say if you can find a special on these, sometimes you can find them, mine came with a game controller for $350, which put it really close to the $335 that I paid for this. And I would probably go the Minisforum route all day long if you can find it around that price range. AceMagic, I've talked a lot about this one already. This also has two 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports, two USB-As on the back, DisplayPort, HDMI, USB 4 on the back and the front, two additional ports. You saw the RGB as well. This one, there have been some reviews on this AceMagic F3A, and the reviews were saying that the graphic performance was not up to par for an 890M. True. True, but only because from the factory, the watts that they're giving the processor is really low. And you can tweak that yourself. I just installed G-Helper on this thing. And if you bump it up to the same 60 watts you give this one, and this blows it out of the water. That missing 10 to 15% of performance, if you saw like the Notebook Check review, that performance is there. You just have to tune it yourself out of it. And the cooling solution is great on this as well. It's very quiet. And from someone like AceMagic, I actually felt like this felt like a pretty solid device. I mean, it looks nice. It's conventional. Other than that RGB stripe, which looks kind of nice. I didn't want to install any of their software to control that RGB stripe, and I didn't. But this is a solid machine. I was impressed with its capabilities. The cooling's fine. There's really no point, to push it past 54-ish watts, because you start running into there's no additional gains, without the RAM getting a little hot. That's the thing I found on these small devices, and you're using fast RAM as the GPU VRAM, and while the CPU does and will overheat on some of these and needed tuning, if that solution is set up, your next worry is going to be the memory. And maybe it's fine. I mean, my memory did not die on any of these, but when you see your RAM getting over 80 degrees Celsius in heavy load situations, you're like, it seems a little high. So anyways, this one is good. If you can find it on special, this is normally like $900. I don't know. I found it on a really good special at the time. I don't know what kind of specials they have right now. So this might be for you if it's on sale. I highly recommend 890 over 780M. 780M is getting a little bit old. The 890M runs a lot better, more so than the benchmarks would tell you, as I've said several times. But this guy, the Topton F12 with the Intel 265H, if you are willing to mod the crap out of it, this is the best budget pick. And it's the best overall pick in terms of performance. So this is such a wild card. You know, you also have to deal with the big chunky adapter. It's a little bit bigger than the rest of them. But for $378 and the performance you get out of this, which beats the rest of the machines, my money's on this one. I wish it weren't so ugly. I wish I didn't have to tear it all apart to put the cooling on it. But again, if you are someone who is willing to tear that all apart, mess with it, this is your pick. If you're someone who just wants to buy it and use it, do not buy this machine, because you're going to run into probably some issues like I did. So you need to put some work into this one. But if you do, it's a great device. I'm really impressed with it. That's my thoughts on mini PCs, using them as HTPCs, little gaming devices hooked up to your big screen TV. Oh, let's talk about a couple other things. If we are talking about Bluetooth solutions, I have a Bluetooth controller. The Bluetooth controller has worked really well on all of them. What I did notice is this AceMagic F3A, the Bluetooth antenna or whatever they have on this is excellent. You know, sometimes I find that I have to have my game controller like not behind my legs or not behind the keyboard for it to like register. But this guy, I don't know what it is, but whenever this one's in place, my game controller is like completely solid. So really good Bluetooth stack in here. So that is one thing with the F3A. The rest of them do fine, but I've just noticed the Bluetooth was just super solid on this device. So yeah, if you want any more information about all of these devices, I'm sure I'll be doing some more videos on them. And specifically, I'll be showing you how to tear this guy apart and fix the cooling problems that it has. If you also want to pick up a 3D printed adapter, let me know in the comments. I'll probably be making those available if people want them, because like I say, this device, stock, unusable. The RAM will absolutely overheat if you're using, you know, quicker RAM. And you want quicker RAM, because that was the other thing with all of these devices. They're using iGPUs. Those iGPUs have shared RAM, and they share the RAM with the system, which means your system memory is what it used for your VRAM. And VRAM needs to be quick in order for games to go fast. And so therefore, you want the fastest RAM possible in your device. I was actually able to, on this F3A, I was able to overclock my 5600 RAM to 6000 megatransfers per second. It was getting a little bit hot, and I wasn't seeing substantial performance gains, but so I did drop it back down to, I think I dropped it down to 5800 and just ran it at 5800 instead, just because it was getting a little bit hot on the RAM here. So not a problem over here, although I didn't see that I could actually adjust the memory on this guy either. So it was what it was on this one. But yeah, anyways, weird video. Just wanted to share my experiences with all these mini PCs. If you like this video, like this content, let me know in the comment below. Love to see you on future videos. Go ahead and hit subscribe, and we'll see you soon. See ya.